Welcome to this interview with Soul Inquiry, where we inquire into all matters of the soul. Today we have with ourselves Michael Sugich, whose Muslim name is Haroon. He's an American writer, a native of Santa Barbara, who studied at UCLA and the California Institute of Arts. Having been initiated into a traditional Sufi order over 40 years ago, he spent 23 years in the sacred city of Mecca. His best-selling book, Signs on the Horizons, Meetings with Men of Knowledge and Illumination, charts his company and interactions with some of the greatest Sufi saints of our time from many parts of the world. He's also the author of Heart's Turn, Sinners, Seekers, and Saints, and the Road to Redemption, and is currently involved in a project, a mini book series called Exemplars of Our Time, with the renowned British photographer Peter Sanders and other scholars. Salam alaikum, Sidi Haroon.
Wa alaikum salam, Yusuf. Thank you very much for thinking about me in your program.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And the topic we want to talk to you about today is spiritual authority.
Not that I am the most expert person on this subject. It's a burning issue right now. I think there are probably people more qualified than I am to comment on it. But let's go and see where this leads us.
Well, one of the reasons why we reached out to you was because you've written about the saints of our time, and in as much as you've had a chance to spend your company with them, we were hoping you could touch upon what it is to actually, how does one come to know these people, and what are the signs?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's a question that is asked all the time. Abu Abbas al-Mursi, Sidi Abu Abbas al-Mursi, who was the successor of Imam Shazali and the Sheikh of Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, said that it is harder to find, I'm paraphrasing this slightly, the translation, it is harder to find a saint or a friend of Allah than it is to find Allah. Because we know Allah through his perfections. How can we know a saint when he eats as we eat and sleeps as we sleep? It's not easy. These people, they don't grow on trees, let me put it that way. And but at the same time, they exist, and they've always existed, and they will exist until the end of time, as we know it. So, but they may not be evident. And so this is, it's a very good question. There are a number of, I don't want to make a discourse on this. I'd rather go back and forth on it, because you yourself have contemplated these things as well and had some experience yourself. For me, the really defining moments of my life have been the contact I've had with men of God, and whether you want to call them saints or awliya or habaib, or they're all many different terms. These people have qualities that are recognizable, and you know in the heart. On the other hand, there are people that they want to take. They have this notion that they have to have a sheikh because that's what you're supposed to have, and that's really not how you meet these people. You first of all, Allah guides you to whoever he wishes you to be with. Mm-hmm. And so the sheikh, it can be a kind of a form of idolatry to put too much importance in having a sheikh. You have to be at a certain crossroads in your life
Mm.
to really be able to benefit from someone who can take you on a spiritual path. There's an old book, old translation of two books that were written by Ibn Arabi, describing his shuyukh. And he had many, 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 many shuyukh. And sometimes the sheikh that he would have a sheikh who would teach him one thing, or he'd meet him once, or he wouldn't meet him at all, but he'd have a dream. You know, of course, he was he wasn't a usual person, an ordinary person. But by the same token, what he shows is the earthiness of these spiritual people, the ordinariness in the world of these people. And if you read the tabaqat of the awliya, of the great saints of Islam, and you look at them carefully, you see that they were very down to earth people. You know, they were wood carriers. They were, you know, they were ordinary people. So it's something you need to put everything in priority, a matter of priority. We have a lot of young people who become Muslims, let's say enter Islam from another religion, or who have been born Muslim and sort of it's a sort of inherited religion, but they don't really engage with it until later. And then suddenly they want to take a spiritual path, and they think they have to have a sheikh. You know, or I've got to have a sheikh because someone else told them that you have to have a sheikh. And there's a lot of literature on this. And I'm not going to pretend to sort of be the representative of the depth of literature. There are reasons why you need a sheikh, but this idea of, you know, how do I find one? Someone came to my sheikh, Mulay Hashim Belghiti, and said, how do we select a sheikh? And he just burst out laughing, and he said, who are you to select a sheikh? You know, it is, you know, and my response would be, what do you think? You're in a supermarket, you know, you're walking down the aisles and say, I think I'll have this one, you know, I'll try this one out. And it's more intimate because the sheikh is only there, and in fact the wali, your companion, is only there to help you to know God, to take you along the path. We're trying to help each other. So there's a direct relationship with a sheikh, being with a wali, and he may be sheikh. He may not be what we call a sheikh murabbi, a teaching sheikh. He may just be an incredibly pure friend of God, someone who is beloved of God, who loves God. And so
one of the things that came, because I think we spoke offline before this actual interview, and you did touch upon how a lot of the time, and this probably is more Western phenomena, but this whole achievement focused, achievement centered, and so then the next thing is I need a sheikh, right? Another thing to tick off in terms of my achievement. And in many ways, based on what you were saying, have people learned what it means to be a murid, which is genuinely wanting God, as opposed to wanting a sheikh.
Well, that's a big part of it. People ask me, first of all, Allah, there's a secret in this relationship. And in fact, there's a secret in all of our encounters with the people of God. This is from the Creator. God is guiding you, and so there's a dua that seekers are encouraged to recite, which is Allahumma dulani ala min yadulani alayk. Allah, guide me to the one who can guide me to you, because Allah is the guide. And you will find someone according to your need and to your longing, to your aspiration. It's people have asked me, what do I do when I go to a sheikh? Well, what should I bring with me? And I said, need. You need to be needy. You have to feel desperately needy. If you feel complacent and I'm okay, everything's fine, you're not going to get anything out of the encounter. You have to be in great need. And I mean, I think it was Ibn Ata'Allah who was, when he first came to his sheikh, he was shaking, he was trembling, he was so scared. And these people are not frightening in that sense, but the heart is afraid, you know, that they're, for all sorts of reasons. So for me, the defining moments in my life have been encounters with these kinds of people. And what characterizes all of them, without any exception, is incredible humility. Even someone said, well, what about the majestic shuyukh? And I think the person that asked me that question really didn't understand what majesty is, because majesty is also beautiful. And so I would say that Habib Abdul Qadir as-Saggaf was majestic. You know, I'm not, as again, I have no right to make a comment on any of these people or categorize them or anything, but he was majestic, but he was incredibly humble. Incredibly humble. He was it's in the service of people all the time. And there's a great story that Habib Ali Jifri, Allah protect him, told about Saggaf. He was driving. He was going from one gathering to another, as the people did in Jeddah back in that time, and he was with a young man who was helping him. And the young man, they got in a car. The young man closed the door for the sheikh, got in the front seat. And Habib Ali was apparently driving. This is when they were young. And they drove to the next gathering. And then the young man came out to let Habib Abdul Qadir Saggaf out of the car. And he said, no, you go on ahead. You go on ahead. That's fine. So he sent him on ahead. And then he turned to Habib Ali and said, can you come out and open the door for me? And the young man had, by mistake, slammed the car door on his hand. He didn't say anything. And Habib Ali rushed around and said, why didn't you say something? And he said, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want him to be upset. Wow. He said, can you take me to the hospital? You know. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is who these people are. They're there to help you. They're there to serve you. I mentioned this in Signs on the Horizons. I was sitting with my Sheikh Sayyid Omar Abdullah, mm-hmm. and we were in another room in Habib Ahmed Mashur Haddad's house. And Habib was talking to someone. People would come to him all the time, and they'd kind of dump on him in a way. You know, they'd say, I have to move my apartment and my flat, and I don't know what to do. And he's sitting there, I would think, my God, you know, why are they coming? They're wasting his time. Mm-hmm. And he'd be sitting and listening, and, well, where do you want to live? And where's your work? And, you know, he'd be giving them advice like that. And I used to think, you know, here's a man with children, grandchildren, you know, he doesn't have to work. You know, why doesn't he relax, and why does he need to have? So I was thinking about all that, and I turned to Sayyid Omar Abdullah, and I said, I don't understand how Habib can stand being around someone like me. I just really don't understand that. And Habib Omar said, Sayyid Omar said, without missing a beat, he said, Habib only wants to be alive because of someone like you.
Allah.
Otherwise, he'd rather be with his Lord.
Allah.
And that's what these people are like. They're always serving you. They're always serving you. Uh, um, my current sheikh, Mullah Hashim Belhiti, people know about him, I think, through my book, because I wrote about him in Signs on the Horizons. So young people have come to see him. They've come from England or the US or Canada or other places to sit in his presence. So two young women, a few years ago, two young women came to see Mullah Hashim. And a friend of mine met them after a gathering that he was presiding over, and he said, "Did you meet Mullah Hashim?" And they said, "No, we didn't meet him. We didn't meet him. He wasn't there. There was another sheikh talking, and he wasn't there." And they were very sad. We didn't get a chance to see him. So as things happen nowadays, someone had made a video, mobile phone video of the gathering, and so they were looking at the video, and there were singers, and they were doing dhikr and drinking tea and that sort of thing. And the camera panned over the gathering, and my friend said, "No, Mullah Hashim is there. Do you see? That's Mullah Hashim." Right. They both burst into tears. They said, "He's the one that was serving us and asking us if we were okay, if we needed anything."
Subhanallah.
That's who these people are. And that's one of the ways. The other thing, too, as a matter of safety, these people have to meticulously follow the Sharia. They may be easy on you, but they follow the Sharia. And they don't make a big deal out of it either. I mean, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Isa, I was, very fortunate to be able to, spend some time with him. And we used to meet at the Haram every Fajr. And then between Fajr and Shuruq, sunrise, he would make tawaf over and over and over and over again. And I watched him closely during the time that I spent with him. And he was like a sunnah, astaghfirullah, I shouldn't say this, he was an exemplar of the sunnah. He did all the sunnah prayers. He did everything. He even, when he ate, when food came, he would always eat fruit first, because in the Quran, fruit is mentioned before meat or other foods. So he was meticulous, personally meticulous about these things. And he was actually one of the first people that insisted that I find a sheikh. He used to, whenever I'd see him, he'd say, "Haroon, you have to have a sheikh." But he never said, "I'm your sheikh." Never. And I didn't feel a connection. And this is where this transaction comes in. It's a matter of recognition. And the sheikh recognizes you, probably first, but you have an intuition about it. There's a recognition, and So when I said there's a secret, the secret is that these people, this is written for you to have a sheikh. There's a lot of literature on this. So anyone who's really serious to look through the classical literature, it's the need for a sheikh is mentioned. Why do you need a sheikh? Well, if you're on a spiritual path, it's like anything else. You need a coach. You need someone who's been on the same journey, arrived at some point or another, and can take you to the point that he's arrived at. You see what I'm saying? So some people, maybe they only need someone who's limited in a way, because they're limited. They can only go so far. Because this is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this idea of I have to have I want someone to take me, to great spiritual heights. Well, if that's a sincere aspiration, that's good. But most people really, they don't want, they think they want something, but they don't really want it that badly. Mm. There's a great story of a man coming, he went to his sheikh and he said, I want to see the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. I'm longing to see the Prophet. Mm. So the sheikh made him eat fish. He said, you will, inshallah, you will see the Prophet. So he made him eat lots of fish, right? And that night, he went to sleep and he dreamed of water. And he came back, he said, I didn't see the Prophet. He said, yeah, because that was more important to you. You were thirsty. You have to only, you have to want something very, very badly. And most people, when it comes down to it, are not willing to give up everything. One of my friends, when he was young, he went to his sheikh, and he said, he said, I want the goal. I want you to take me to the goal. I insist on it, because he's actually a great murid, a great fakir. Mm. But when he was young, he was, very, very intense. Mm. And the sheikh said, don't ask for that. He said, no, I insist, I demand it, I must have the goal. And the sheikh said, I'm telling you, don't ask for that. He said, no, I insist. So he said, all right, if you insist, go to your wife, divorce her, say goodbye to your children, settle your affairs, and come back to me. He said, I can't do that. He said, and don't ask for it. Because these things are very unsettling. I mean, if you read about these spiritual experiences, union with Allah, it's not like anything that we have in ordinary existence. I mean, it's something that's very, and it's something that, inshallah, everyone will have who is on a path eventually, sooner or later. But my teacher, Sayyid Omar Abdullah, he used to repeat what his teacher, Habib Omar bin Sumayd, used to say, which was the later the better. The later the better. Because you have maturity, you're ready, you don't have encumbrances, you don't have things that can, and we've seen people like ecstatics, people who have very intense spiritual experiences, Majadib, and they're strange people, because they don't have any filter. And I mean, I met someone like that in Morocco, and he took a shine to me, but it was scary. And he said, Haroon, you have to do 500,000 Salat al-Nabi. You must do it. He said, I've seen the Prophet 80 times. It was like it was over. And he wanted to take over, and then he wanted me to give him all my money. And he wanted me to do this. And it was like, it was very, very scary. Right. So the adab of being around these people is you greet them and you beat it. You get away from them, because they have something. They're connected, but they're connected in a way where they don't know how they got to where they got. They can't take you anywhere.
Right. So so on that point, I mean, mashallah, like from what you've said, and amongst the key attributes of these sheikhs, those who can guide, is that they kind of mirror the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they're pointers to that rahmah, that kind of compassion and that service. In fact, what came to me while you were speaking about some of the mashayikh is that even with the Ba'alawi mashayikh, there's often a sense of actually praying that the spiritual states are veiled from the murids themselves, so they're not aware of what they're attaining because of the dangers of that identification, it going into the ego. How does a murid, now given somebody finds a sheikh, how do they then distinguish between psychic phenomena and spiritual experiences and just pure charisma than from someone who's just genuine? Because sometimes, as you said, they could be hidden, the shuyukh.
Well, many of them are, and they're very most of the people that I trust, let me put it this way, are very understated. You need to be ruthless in a certain way, and there are guides to this. The I actually have the Foundations of Spiritual Faith by Sidi Ahmad Zarruq, which has been very nicely translated by Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, long time ago. This is an early translation that he made. Gives you a kind of very clear guideline of you know what is expected from you and what is expected from the sheikh. It's like a 15 page document, and it's well worth finding if anyone can read that, because it's very clear. There are certain criteria that you need to follow. First of all, is the sheikh, or that the sheikh needs to follow. The first criterion is, does he follow the Sharia? Is he adherent to the Sharia? This is absolutely fundamental. Anyone who says that they're a sheikh, or who is in a position of being a sheikh who does not follow the Sharia, forget it. Walk away. Don't get involved.
What if they claim? What if they claim special dispensations based on their ranks? And
walk away. Walk away. They don't have special dispensation. The prophets didn't have special dispensation. They were the embodiment of Sharia, and so anyone who says that and starts invoking the haqiqah, walk away from them. I'm telling you, this is my advice. People need to trust themselves a little bit more. A lot of young people get involved. They're so insecure, so they have somebody who looks the part, who looks really great, and says all the right things, has a good script, is, like you said, maybe charismatic, has some psychic power or something. This has nothing to do with anything. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. And it reflects your level of sincerity as well. If you're impressed by theatricality, then you've got a problem already, because it's not about that. It has nothing to do with that. It's to do with the love of Allah and the Messenger, and the reverence for the Sharia, because the Sharia is everything. It's taken me this. I'm an old guy now. I mean, it's taken me this long to really realize how, I wish that I, understood this more. People, and Ibn Ata'illah talks about this in the Hikam, and I don't have the aphorism at my, in memory, but he basically says that if you're attracted to the supererogatory over the fard, this is a passion. This has nothing to do with spirituality. It's like, let's get the 5 prayers over with so we can get to the real thing. No, the real thing is the 5 prayers and all the additional ibadah that you have, or that you're prescribed by an authentic sheikh, is so that when you face Allah in the salat, you're facing with great with taqwa and with khushua, and this is what it's about. Someone told me, I was in Lebanon last year, and I visited the tomb of Muhammad Uzai, Imam Muhammad Uzai, who was one of the great imams, who was, I think, one of the tabi'in, he was very early, and he had a madhab, and that madhab has disappeared. And one of the reasons why the madhab has disappeared is, this is one reason that was pointed out, was mentioned to me, was that in his madhab, you had to have at least one moment of khushua, of awe, of being overwhelmed. And if you didn't have that in your salat, you had to repeat it. Well, of course, by within 100 years or 150 years, people just couldn't do that. They didn't have that. Whereas, and what that tells me anyway is that the Sahaba, when they faced Allah in the prayer, they and made the takbir, they were instantly in khushu'. They were in khushu'. This is not mentioned or talked about or anything. We now struggle to get through 5 prayers just physically without we don't have the concentration and so on. So a lot of the exercises that were given by a sheikh are in a certain way remedial exercises, so you can approach the Sharia and with meaning and with understanding and with presence.
What happens if in terms of the sheikh, sometimes you can get, this is something you see in the in the literature, that shuyukh have different personalities. The water's the same, but it takes on the color of the vessel of the sheikh. And sometimes you can get a sheikh who is jalali, right? Quite austere and very rigorous. And
right.
how does a murid or so make a distinction between what is persona, just personality, and something that can step across a certain boundary when, I don't want to use the word, but it's probably what we're going to come to with a lot of people, just the sense of abuse, that someone is literally being.
Well, I think what I was saying is first of all, you use these benchmarks.
Right.
Is he following the Sharia? If he's abusing you, he's not following the Sharia. End of story.
Right.
And the other thing is, we're living in different times now.
Yeah.
We're not living in a time where this intense zuhud that was demanded of early people. I mean, even one of the awliya mentioned, I can't remember who this is, but I just read it.
Yeah.
I have a brain, I have short-term memory loss. I don't really have a very retentive memory. But one of the awliya, he pointed out that the Sahaba didn't do as much as the tabi'in and the tabi'in of the tabi'in, the early awliya, like Abu Yazid al-Bistami and these people. They did unbelievable things. You read about what they did and their behavior in that time. We can't do that. And Imam Abdullah al-Haddad in the 18th century, he said, and I think that this is absolutely the case now, that we're no longer in the time of the muqarrabun, the people who are drawn near that's described in the Quran. We're in the time of the people of the right hand. And the people of the muqarrabun, the people, the path of the muqarrabun was the path that was dominated by the Ismul Azam, by the name of the great name, whereas the path of the people of the right hand is the people of Salat al-Nabi. And most of the shuyukh that I know, they focus on this. This is there's this idea of going into 40 days khalwa and this kind of thing is fading away. It's not done very much anymore because people don't have the concentration. They're distracted, and also because of this, because we're living in very difficult times, very dark times in a way, everything is easier for us. So you don't need to do as much. My teachers and Sheikh Sayyid Omar Abdullah, he told me about when someone from Zanzibar was going to Europe. It was a young man, and he went to Habib Omar bin Sumaid, and he said, "I'm going to Zanzibar. Can you give me discipline? Can you give me something?" And he said, "No. When you're in Europe, it's so dark there. There's so little dhikrullah, there's so little remembrance that you just need to do this, do this. And the young man disregarded the advice of the sheikh, and he became a mujdu. He went off his rocker, you know,
Right.
and that can happen. This is why you need a sheikh who can tell you, and in this time, you very often it's like, don't do the, you know, don't do too much. Do this. Make it easy. They make it very easy for you. And this is, and so when you see a sheikh who's, as you say, Jalali, I don't know what that means, because for example, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Isa, he was Jalali. He was very stern. Wasn't scary. He was wonderful, but he was tough. You know, Habib Abdul Qadir Sagaf was very majestic. He was Jalali, but he was so beautiful. I mean, the majesty is encompassed by beauty. I mean, it's so, and these people, and one of the things that when you have some experience and you're with people of some attainment, you start getting a sense of what that is. And one of the things is they don't have ego. The ego isn't there. So if you find a sheikh who has a temper tantrum, walk away, get out.
Right.
So don't waste your time. If you have a sheikh who's interfering with every little part of your life and telling you this and that, you walk away. This isn't the way they behave. Whether, you know, and you know, you need to also trust your intuition. And a lot of people, they allow themselves to be abused because they don't listen to themselves. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink, and it's very interesting because it starts with the purchase by the Getty Museum of an ancient stele, and they did all the chemical tests and they did everything, and they paid millions of dollars for this whatever it is, this piece, and then they unveiled it to very eminent art critics. And when they unveiled it, the first instant, one of the critics said, "Can you get your money back?" They knew instantly. And so he interviewed these people and said, "What? How did you know?" "I don't know. I just knew." We don't trust our instincts enough. We have instincts. What is it about? And then you can verify your instincts by these criteria.
I mean, you brought up Imam Haddad, and this is another conversation we kind of had offline, but it's relevant to this. Some people might say, and in fact, very interestingly, I was reading that particular section of Imam Haddad with my wife, and Imam Haddad even brought up the idea of how this isn't like an idea that this is somehow a lower rank. It's exactly as you said. It's the most appropriate thing for our times, because that's how the Sahaba was, and it's going back to the Prophet directly, the Prophet ﷺ. But some people might say, and I know you're based, or your Sheikh from the Maghreb, Morocco, and they might read these really nice things about the Darqawi Tariqa in the original phases, where they wore the patched cloak and they went out and begged and they picked up the garbage and they did this way of tajreed, and they kind of take that as, okay, that's another type of tasawwuf, and I want that type, or that's the type that I think is most suited for me.
Yeah, well, I would go back to what Mullah Hashim said. Who do you think you are to choose what you want and what you don't want? I mean, the whole point of that kind of tariq or suluk is that these people didn't want that. They didn't want to. They didn't want to collect garbage. And so the sheikh broke them.
That's a beautiful point. Yeah.
It was Ibn Ajiba, there's a translation of his biography, and his sheikh did that to him because he was already an eminent aristocratic alim, and so to break down this pride of who he was, the sheikh made him beg, which was an utter disgrace. I mean, this was just a horrible thing for him. It was very difficult.
Yeah.
And there are equivalents now to that, but not, it isn't this sort of dramatic kind of thing. I mean, I actually, in the letters of Sheikh Darqawi, I can read something. He talks about finding a sheikh. Let me see if I can find this.
Okay.
Choosing a sheikh, okay? Concerning the man you mentioned who is confused about who among the people of this time he should take as a sheikh, say to him that he should make a retreat in an empty mosque or in the shrine of a great saint for a week or 2 or 3. During that time, he should maintain physical purity, as well as the purity of his clothes and the place where he sits. He should keep his tongue clean of lies and his stomach clean of anything forbidden. And he should offer the prayer, recite the Quran, invoke blessings upon the messenger of God, or any other practice he can, but without overdoing any of it or exhausting himself. This is a key thing, even in that time. This is the 18th century. Then will God Most High show him what is true as true and what is false as false. And God is a warrant for what we say. So you don't have to, I mean, it's very hard nowadays for someone to go for 2 or 3 weeks without working, without doing anything, and sitting in a mosque. But what he's basically saying is you have to be very desperate. You have to be that single-minded. Now, in our time, that doesn't, Allah has made it easier, but there still needs to be that level of desperation. You need to, and then also it's why are you doing it? You know, what are your intentions? There's another passage here. Let's see. Pretenders and people with the hearts of prophets. Okay, oh, my brothers, I do not see anyone who has succeeded in bringing people back to their Lord and Master from their state of heedlessness, except the companions and the successors and those who followed them, such as our Imams of Junaid, al-Jilani, al-Ghazali, al-Shazali, and their like. They were the ones who combined knowledge and deeds, the law and the truth, intoxication and sobriety, as we see no one superior to them in this respect, except as Allah so wills. We also see many people of our time who take sheikhs not for the purpose of drawing nearer to God, but rather for selfish interests and ambitions. Indeed, how many have come to me desiring to take the litany, adamantly insisting that I give it to them, but their intentions in doing so has been so that people might consider them as sheikhs, or that they might beg from people wearing what we wear, that is, having the outward appearance of tajreed, of stripping away, as it is known to people of our land. They also desire to write down my teachings for this same purpose. All of this is entirely vain, with no intrinsic value. If I mention it to you here, it is only because of what I see of people's states, their corrupt intentions, and the extent to which they are immersed in what holds no benefit. It is almost as if the world had suddenly become devoid of the people of outward knowledge and inward knowledge alike. May God forbid. In fact, it is full of those with whose hearts are like the heart of Muhammad, or the hearts of Noah, Hud, David, Shu'aib, Seth, Salih, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Khidr, upon all of whom be peace, and others, for we see every one of God's saints bears the traits of one of the prophets. Upon them and upon our prophet be God's blessings and salutations of peace. And we see that God has servants whom he knows and who know him, whom he loves and who love him, whom he exalts and who exalt him, whom he venerates and who venerate him, whom he respects and who respect him, He is with them wherever they are, even as they are with him wherever he is, which is to say, everywhere, for they are always in his presence. The master Sidi Ibn Ata'Allah said, the imperative need of the gnostic never vanishes, nor is his repose in anything but God. That's the standard
Right.
that we're dealing with. People who get involved in things that have to do with commerce and making, I mean, the other thing is, I'll be very blunt, look where a so-called sheikh gets his money. Because in my experience, every single one of the shuyukh are working people. And, you know, sometimes we meet these people when they're in very advanced age. So they're retired, you know, but they're not living off of, they're not professional Muslims. And this was a problem that I see in this time. You have a lot of people who are trading off of being, they know a little bit, they went to school, they studied a little bit, now they're professional Muslims. That's not to say that there isn't a place for someone to teach and have some, you know, compensation for their teaching and that sort of thing. But it's another thing of people making a living off of being a Muslim.
What happens,
You know,
Sidi Haroon, if, because this is actually one of the main reasons why we had this call. So, I mean, alhamdulillah, what we've kind of established is that this idea of being a dead body in the hands of the sheikh or surrendering to the sheikh is contingent on the sheikh himself following the Sharia and allowing for that kind of, I don't want to say complete autonomy, but there is an idea of the sheikh, the murid, having a sense of his own, you know, what's right and what's wrong in terms of intuition. What happens when abuse does happen, like on a purely objective level, financial abuse, or worse, sexual abuse or physical abuse? Because now we're also in the age of social media, where, you know, somebody might just go and say, okay, I want justice, and the formats of justice in terms of the within the whole framework of the Tasawwuf or other shuyukh, they're not you know, alerting other people as to what's happened. So we're just going to go on social media and basically spread this. I mean, how is justice served in that case?
it's not served at all, and anyone who does it is wrong and should stop immediately and should ask Allah to forgive them. One of the things that Shaykh Zarruq says is that if the sheikh is wanting in some area, then he's your brother, you know. And the shuyukh, the adab of these kinds of things. First of all, it's a very old story.
Right.
This is, I mentioned this to Hashim not too long ago, and he just smiled and said, "This is an old story. This is, and you know, we think about it since the first community. We had Musaylimah,
right,
who was a false prophet. There have always been people of false claims.
Right.
One of the shuyukh that I used to sit with, he said, anyone who claims to be a sheikh is a liar, because it doesn't work that way, you know.
I think the trauma would be inevitable, but in this situation, but I think what we need to know is that, like anything, that needs to be turned to Allah, right? So social media venting is only going to aggravate that cycle, because that's not, you know.
Yeah, it's social media is a big problem today. I mean, it's okay for I mean, I'm ambivalent about even doing something like this, frankly, you know. I mean, to be honest, and it's only because of you I do it. But it's a problem. I have a friend who's a psychologist, and I asked her, you know, what's the problem with young people today? She said they're incredibly lonely. They're deeply, deeply lonely. And I said, why? She said, social media, because people are talking at screens, and they're texting, and they're emojiing, and they're doing, you know, Instagramming, and they're doing all, but it's not human. There's no interaction. There's no human element in this, and so people are alone in their rooms doing this stuff. It's not healthy. The other thing is people watch news all the time. They watch, or they're on the internet. They're listening to some angry guy shaming somebody because they did something wrong. And this is not the way of Islam. It's wrong. It's completely wrong. Because what has been going on to some extent is really is shaming. They're shaming people, and this is a very, very negative, and it's completely wrong. There's no justification for it at all, because they're not doing anyone a service. And people have come to me very, very upset about this thing, because they're saying, I guess, that everybody's a fake, and everyone. That's not true. There are genuine guides who can help you, who can guide you, and so on. But I think there's too much focus on joining a tariqa and having a sheikh. I mentioned to you the other day. I was with my sheikh, Sayyid Omar Abdullah, and I said, I'm a Maliki. He said, you don't know enough to have a madhab. Just be a Muslim. We're in that level. We're in the world now. We don't know enough. Why are you having a sheikh? Well, what do you think you're going to get out of it? Are you just joining a club? You feel better because you have, what's it all for? And the real shuyukh, they give you, it's like medicine. They just give you some medicine, and the medicine is almost inevitably thicker.
Sure.
They don't make you do something. They don't interfere in your life. They don't, and they're your servant. They're trying to help you. They want you. And when for example, Mullah Hashim Balghiti was, he was acclaimed as a sheikh. He didn't do it. Someone sent, they had a meeting, and someone wrote this florid, incredible sort of announcement that he'd been given this authority, and it was verified by the awliya. And it was all this hyperbole, the kutub of the zaman, or all this thing.
Right,
and
right.
He read it, and he crossed everything out, except the servant of Allah.
Allah, mashallah.
He crossed all this nonsense, and so this you can use that. That's all. And so what you with this so you what you do is you advise. The adab is to advise the sheikh, or the teacher, or whoever he is, if he's doing something wrong, to give him good advice, to counsel people in private, say about these things that they should.
Yeah. So this is where the objection arises, that you're right. It is something that has existed since time. I mean, this is not even unique to the Muslim community. There's lots of spiritual abuse and fake gurus and fake Zen masters and so on. But then the question then becomes that if it's advised in private, then often these same sheikhs, they kind of resurrect themselves somewhere else, and it becomes kind of a systemic kind of continuation. And then one of the things that's coming out of this kind of view now is that, look, we need to bring some kind of, if the mashayikh themselves are advocating, firstly, shielding the person and then advising him in private, what happens to the victims? What happens to those who, they could be women, they could be, yeah.
Okay, it depends. Seriously, it depends. First of all, they need to be more self-reliant. If someone is doing something wrong, okay, you walk away. So a'udhu billah, and walk away. Don't be cowed. These people, the awliya, are people. They're people. And there isn't a single sheikh on the face of the earth who is infallible, ever. This is fundamental. The shuyukh are not infallible. The anbiya are infallible because they're disciplined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the awliya are not. They're people. They're people. And they, whatever it is, walk away. If let's say someone makes a pass at you or something, walk away. Don't say, oh, he's the sheikh, so he can do that. Of course he can't do that. This is why we follow the Sharia. And this is the problem. People get involved in these so-called spiritual things. They don't know the first thing about Islam, much less spirituality.
But the danger of groupthink sometimes is that if a person, and that's true on a kind of a base level, the person should walk away. But if a person is now in a group and they're vulnerable people, they don't know much about the Sharia, but yet they see everyone else respecting the sheikh, then there's often a type of cognitive dissonance before that awareness actually sets in that, look.
Yeah, I understand that. But seriously, you need to be, first of all, why are you on a spiritual path? Why people have the wrong, it's what Sheikh Darqawi said, wrote. People they're doing these things for the wrong reasons. First of all, they want a spiritual experience. That's not why you're on the path. You're on the path to know Allah. And you know Allah according to what He wants you to know, not what you want to know. And so you can know Allah through the salat, through this, it's very, very simple. It's to purify the heart. It's to kill the ego. And if you see in a sheikh ego, walk away. This is, I can't stress that enough. And don't worry about it. Don't be traumatized by it. And this is the thing, is people put all this, because I'll tell you, there's a saying, it's an obscure saying by one of the awliya. He wrote, he who wants to follow this Shazali path of ours, this was Shazali sheikh, must first follow the liars from among its people. So I asked my Sheikh Sayyid Omar Abdullah, I said, what does that mean? That's a very weird saying. He said, it means that you're following the path for Allah, not for a person.
Allah.
If the person gets between you and Allah, stands between you and Allah, they're not a sheikh. They're not the sheikh. You don't. Their whole thing is to facilitate your path, is to stand aside and let you take you as much as you can bear it to a realization. You're traveling on a path. That's all they're doing. They're your older brother or older sister, because there are women who are great awliya, who are shuyukh.
What do you think, Sidi Haroon, and this is kind of the kind of thing that these voices are leading to, and this is happening in the West as well, is that they're saying, well, okay, as a way of preventing this from happening, admitting all of the precautions of the fact that we have a Sharia, an objective measure to weigh shuyukh by, but as a way of preventing this, to kind of, so this is one of the things they're advocating, a kind of chartered association where all the shuyukh are kind of part of one, or a collective body, whereby they have kind of a ethical code of conduct. And if somebody goes beyond a certain level, then there's a kind of, okay, he's not part of this thing anymore. Or do you think that's just one of these really modern?
That's nonsense.
Right.
That's silly. Apart from anything else, it's never going to happen.
Right. Exactly.
And it isn't like that. But it's people need to, first of all, you need to trust your instincts.
Right.
People have instincts, and they think, oh well, I don't know. I'm just I don't know anything. Well, no, you're a human being. You know things, and we have the Sharia as this is the bedrock of how we have to start. Also, your intentions. What are your intentions? What are your intentions? Are you turning the sheikh into a father? Right. He's not a father. He's not your father.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a. It's not. And so, in a way, and there's no reason to be traumatized by this, because if your path is to Allah, then that sheikh, even if he's doing something wrong,
Yeah.
He's given you, he's actually taught you something through his wrong action.
Yeah.
You taught you a discernment. You
Yeah.
suddenly, look, I can tell you, most of the people, most of my contemporaries, my peers have gone through these kinds of things
Right. Yeah.
and had these experiences and been, you could say, some to a certain extent traumatized or troubled by it. Let's say troubled by it.
Yeah.
But the people who are damaged by this are the people who go along with it. If you know something is wrong, he's not God. The sheikh is your servant. You know, there's something. You know, people read these books about how you have to love the sheikh and so on. How do you think that happens? The sheikh loves you first.
Yes. Yes.
He loves you first.
Yes.
He,
Yes.
he loves you. You know, this is how, and love, honest, genuine love, is the great accelerator on the spiritual path.
Right. Right.
It's loving something for Allah,
Right.
for the sake of Allah. And I have
Right.
all my contemporaries, my friends who are salihin and great people. I love them because for Allah. I love them because we've been at this for 40, 50 years, a long time. And I see how hard it is. And look at these people. They've given up the world so that they can please Allah as best they can. And they know that they're weak and they have trouble and so on. My advice is, anyone who has doubt, walk away. Walk away. Because Allah is your guide, not some, human being.
Alhamdulillah, I mean, I was kind of putting these questions forward because I can see where it's coming from the position of someone who feels victimized, but I do think everything you said is correct, and especially in my own experience with the mashayikh, that you actually feel that love. They're the ones who give you that healing, and so it's part of it that sometimes is actually worrying with some murids when the dynamic actually becomes one of fear or one of almost like this guilt and this kind of relationship with the sheikh. And
well, the sheikh this is my opinion.
Yeah.
The sheikh should diffuse that immediately now, in this time.
Right.
And make the murid, if such as he is, comfortable.
Right.
Because we're not living in the Middle Ages. We're not living in a time of intense, discipline. We're living in a time where people are hanging on by their fingernails to the deen.
And I think this is what Imam Haddad was referring to. I mean, Imam Haddad, mashallah, had that vision in his time, but in our time, I mean, you mentioned trauma. People, I think we kind of need to cut some of these people some slack, because I think a lot of people end up going to the spiritual path and the shuyukh as part of innate urges to heal, because a lot of people are wounded from childhood and so on. Yeah. And that is part of their growth, because that healing path becomes a path for realization if Allah gives them someone like that. So, I mean, alhamdulillah, I'm really glad I was kind of playing a bit of the other side advocate towards the end, but I'm glad you touched upon that, because one of the reasons why I wanted this call, and alhamdulillah, was to kind of give people a paradigm of hope that there are shuyukh out there, but there is a responsibility in how we follow, and to see things as coming from Allah, right? Because we can be a victim of everyone, but at the end of the day, if we're honest, it's Allah who's bringing about every eventitude in our lives, every aspect of our lives. So we need to see what's He telling us.
I think there's another issue here, and this is some of my esteemed friends have taken positions on this. Nowadays we have this thing of belonging to a tariqa, okay, right, which is legitimate. There are legitimate turuq, and they have a tradition, and they have great depth of knowledge, the authentic turuq, but they've become ossified. They've become it's like joining a club, and this is because the real relationship is between the one who can guide you to Allah and the seeker, the one in need, the murid. And we're not murids anymore. I mean, we've gotten to the point where it's very few people can be a real murid. Because a murid is someone who, if the sheikh tells him something, he does it. He has to do it. And most people can't do everything that they need to do to be a murid. Even my teacher, Sayyid Omar Abdallah, used to say, I was never a good murid, but I loved my sheikh. You know, I just couldn't be away from him. So there's something, there's a great account. It's actually in Mustafa Badawi's book on Imam al-Haddad, where a sheikh has a dream of the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, what is the best thing one can do in this world? And the Prophet ﷺ says, to sit with a wali Allah, with a friend of Allah, for a friend of God, for as long as it takes to milk a goat or cook an egg.
Allah, Allah.
You know, and this is where we are. I mean, sit with these people.
Right.
Sit with them.
Right.
Don't imagine that you're necessarily going to have some great spiritual opening, because this is from Allah. This is not from it's not from your effort. You do the best you can. And what all the shuyukh said, like Sheikh Tarkawi, who was a rigorous sheikh, they practiced tajreed. They gave up everything basically. They were a friend of mine described them as like spiritual hippies. You know, they went up in the mountains, you know, back to nature, and they did dhikr all the time. But even he said, don't exhaust yourself. Don't do too much. The nafs is like a humar. It's like a donkey.
Yeah.
If you overload the donkey, it'll throw it off.
Yeah.
And very often what happens with these people of false claims, shuyukh who really aren't shuyukh, is that they make people do all this stuff and run around and then suddenly they and I know this, I know many people who've left Islam altogether because they're disillusioned and they get all involved in these things. There's real shuyukh they make it easy now. So I mean, I hope that these kinds of episodes.
I think it has, inshallah. I think we'll bring it to an end, but primarily with that message of hope that you left about that dream, about just sitting with the mashayikh and having an open heart, because Allah is in the opinion of the slave as he is. So when we are wounded, we take that to Allah and we use that as fuel to continue, but to never give up hope that there are the men of Allah there, and that God. Right, and they'll be revealed when we're ready. Right,
and we help each other. That's the thing. It's not. People turn this thing into a sort of a idolatry.
Right.
It's we're helping each other, and to the extent that we can. You know,
right.
If a person doesn't know how to do wudu and you know how to do wudu, you can teach them wudu.
Right.
If the person, one of the most touching things I heard of was Sheikh Muhammad ibn Habib, who was acknowledged as the kutub, or the pole of his time. He was one of us was, you know, met him in the last year or so of his life, and he sat down and was teaching them Quran.
Mashallah, mashallah.
I mean, that because he said, and if you listen to his durs, there are his lectures that are recorded from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, he said, if your children come home, make sure that they've prayed. You know.
Yeah, that's
it's very simple. It's not magic. And then if something happens, like something extraordinary happens, this is between you and Allah, and and if you go and say this happens, usually it's said, well, that's mashallah, that's a good sign, you know. You know, I had a dream with Sayyid Omar, an extraordinary dream, where I flew in the dream, and he was encouraging me to fly, and I told him the dream, and he said, I wish I could fly. You know, I mean, they don't make it into something. It's a beautiful relationship that you have with someone who's helping you. They're your
Alhamdulillah.
older brother. They're
Alhamdulillah.
someone. It's not this magical thing, and
Yeah.
put they don't put these extraordinary pressures on people that they can't. You know,
Alhamdulillah.
it isn't like that. We're not
Alhamdulillah.
living in that time anymore.
I think on that note, Sidi Haroon, inshallah, we'll call it Jazakallah khair for coming and agreeing to this call. Inshallah ta'ala. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. Inshallah.
Whatever. I hope it's useful anyway.
Inshallah.
And
It was good.
Allah forgive me for
No,
saying
it was-
anything. You know, I can be very inappropriate sometimes.
No, alhamdulillah. Allah Jazakallah khair again. It was very useful, inshallah. And so we pray that Allah keeps you alive and well and healthy, inshallah, and continues to benefit. When is your project going to come out, the exemplars? Is it anything juicy?
Well, we're scheduled at this point to launch at the Bradford Literature Festival next July, hopefully. I mean, it really depends on this pandemic, what's happening with that.
Inshallah, inshallah.
But it's going forward, and we're still waiting for news of the completion of the funding. We have some funding.
Okay.
So inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay then. Assalamu alaikum. Oh,
Salam.
yes.